It all started subtly. Muffled giggles during the night coming from my son's room. Low murmurs as if he were talking to someone. I thought it was just my imagination. He's only 4 years old. At first I brushed it off. Kids have vivid imaginations, I told myself. Maybe he was dreaming or talking to one of his stuffed animals. But then I started noticing small changes. His toys weren't where I left them. They'd be lined up perfectly along the windowsill in the morning, arranged in strange, symmetrical patterns. Sometimes I'd find little drawings tucked under his pillow, figures with wide eyes and crooked smiles, always standing next to a boy who looked just like my son. One night I cracked the door open just enough to peek in. He was sitting up in bed, whispering into the dark corner of the room. I couldn't see who or what he was talking to. His eyes were wide, fixed on something I couldn't see. And then he laughed, a soft, delighted giggle that didn't sound entirely like his own. I called his name. He turned slowly like he hadn't heard me at first. When he saw me, he smiled. "He says you're not supposed to be awake," he whispered. "Who says that?" I asked, stepping into the room. But he just tilted his head and looked past me, to the hallway behind. And that's when I felt it. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. The first time I asked who he was talking to, he just smiled and replied, "The man in the corner." I followed his gaze, expecting to see nothing but shadows. There was no one there, just the empty space near his dresser, dimly lit by the soft glow of his nightlight. I chuckled nervously, trying not to let my unease show. "There's no one there, buddy," I said, smoothing his hair. "Maybe it's just your imagination." But he shook his head, still smiling. "He says you can't see him yet." Something about the way he said it, so calm, so certain, sent a chill down my spine. Children say strange things all the time, I reminded myself. It's normal. Innocent. Still, that night I left his door slightly open, just in case. Over the next few days, he talked about the man more often. He likes it when I draw with him. He stands real still so I don't get scared. He told me he used to live here. Every time I asked questions, my son would get quiet, as if he wasn't supposed to say more. Then, one evening, as I tucked him in, he looked at me with wide, serious eyes and said, "He doesn't like when you don't believe me." That night, the bedroom door creaked open by itself, and the corner didn't feel empty anymore. I looked around. The room was dark, with the nightlight casting shadows on the walls. There was no one there, no sound, no movement. But the way he said it, it bothered me. Not just the words, but the tone. Calm, almost rehearsed, too mature for a 4-year-old. It was as if he were repeating something he'd heard many times before. "The man in the corner," he had said, and even though my eyes told me there was nothing there, something deep inside me, something old and instinctive, urged me not to turn my back to that spot. I pulled the blankets up to his chin and kissed his forehead. "Good night, sweetheart," I whispered. As I turned to leave, he added softly, "He likes when you say good night, too." I stopped in my tracks. My hand was still on the doorknob. A chill ran across my back like the touch of cold fingers. Slowly, I glanced over my shoulder at the corner of the room. Still empty, still silent, but the shadows seemed deeper now, thicker. I closed the door, but I didn't go to bed. I sat in the hallway just outside his room, straining to hear anything. Nothing came. Just silence, and that thick, awful feeling of being watched. When I finally fell asleep on the hallway floor, I dreamed of a man standing in the corner of a small room, unmoving, smiling, and waiting. And in the morning, my son had drawn a new picture. It was of me, sleeping outside his door, and the man was standing over me. I thought it was an imaginary friend, something common in childhood. I kissed his forehead, tucked him in, and went back to bed. But that night, I slept with a weight on my chest I couldn't explain. Not a physical weight, something else. Like the room was too full, like the walls were too close, like something unseen had followed me back from his doorway. I tossed and turned, the silence of the house feeling wrong somehow. Too thick. Every creak of the floorboards felt deliberate. Every whisper of wind through the window sounded like a breath too close to my ear. Around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No sound, no dream, just a sharp awareness that something had changed. I stared at the ceiling, heart beating a little too fast, and then I heard it. A giggle, not in my room, in his, muffled, happy. I sat up, listened. "No, you can't come in here. She's sleeping," my son whispered through the wall. I froze. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Like he was answering someone. Like someone had asked. I got out of bed and moved to the hallway. His door was slightly ajar, just as I had left it. I pushed it open slowly. He was sitting up in bed, staring into the same dark corner. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" I asked gently. He turned to me, eyes wide. Not scared, not surprised. Just calm. "He wants to know why you don't like him." My mouth went dry. I looked at the corner, still empty, still quiet. But I swear, in the faint light of the nightlight, the shadows shifted. Just slightly. Like something had moved. Or was pretending not to. The next night I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. The carpet muffled them, but I could tell. Light, careful, almost hesitant. I sat up in bed, holding my breath, listening. The house was still except for those faint steps. And then silence. That kind of silence that feels intentional. I got up and walked to his room. The door was ajar, the soft glow of the nightlight spilling into the hallway. But something was off. The ceiling light was on. Not bright, but dimmed, like someone had twisted the switch halfway. I was sure I had turned it off before. Positive. I pushed the door open. He was sitting on the floor, facing the corner. Just like before. But this time he wasn't whispering. He was listening. Eyes locked on the empty space as if someone were talking to him. And he didn't want to miss a word. "Hey," I called softly. He didn't turn. "Sweetheart?" I stepped inside. "What are you doing?" Still nothing, just that fixed, unblinking gaze. I crouched beside him and gently touched his shoulder. That's when he finally spoke, his voice low and flat. He said not to talk right now. "He's showing me something." I looked into the corner. Nothing. But the air felt colder, like walking into a place you're not supposed to be. I picked him up. He didn't fight me, didn't speak again. He just kept looking over my shoulder until I turned off the light and shut the door. Back in my room, I held him while he fell asleep. And when I finally closed my eyes, I dreamed of a figure standing in a hallway just like ours, motionless, watching a door slowly open from the inside. He was sitting on the bed, eyes fixed on the corner of the room, motionless, back straight, hands resting on his lap like he was waiting for something. When I asked what he was doing, he replied without looking away, "The man is angry. You woke him up." A chill crawled up my spine. There was no fear in his voice, no confusion, just a quiet certainty that made the room feel smaller. I glanced at the corner, empty, but the shadows there felt heavier somehow, as if they were watching us back. I walked slowly toward the bed, keeping my voice steady. "What do you mean angry? There's no one there." He shook his head once, still not looking at me, still staring. "You don't see him, but he sees you." Something in me twisted, that primal part of the brain that doesn't need proof to feel danger. I sat beside him, trying to bring him back to me. "Hey, look at me. There's no man, okay? You're safe. I'm here." Finally, he turned his head, eyes wide and distant, like he was seeing two things at once, me and something behind me. Then he whispered, "He says it's his room now." And before I could speak again, the nightlight flickered once, then went out. Since then, everything changed. The air in that house felt heavier, not just metaphorically. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something. I had constant chills, especially when passing his bedroom door. Even in the middle of the day, with sunlight pouring through the windows, that room felt wrong. I started avoiding it without meaning to. I'd find excuses to keep the door closed. I told myself it was just to help him sleep better. But the truth was, I couldn't stand the feeling that something inside was watching me, waiting for me to get too close. My son changed too. He stopped calling me in the middle of the night. He didn't cry. He didn't complain about nightmares. Instead, he became quiet. Too quiet for a 4-year-old. He'd sit for long stretches, staring into corners or drawing strange, dark pictures filled with tall, faceless figures and tiny houses surrounded by thick black scribbles. When I asked him what the drawings meant, he would shrug and say, "He likes when I draw him, so he knows I remember." I started waking up at odd hours, always between 2 and 3 a.m. No sound, just a presence, the kind you can't explain but you know it's there. Sometimes I'd find his door wide open even though I'd closed it. Once I found it locked from the inside. He was asleep in bed. The window was shut. No way in, no way out. And then the whispers started. Low, indistinct. Sometimes just behind my ear, sometimes behind the walls. I told myself I was tired, stressed, imagining things, but deep down I knew something was in that house, and it wasn't imaginary anymore. In the morning, I tried to talk to my son. The light of day usually brought some comfort, some sense of reason. Maybe, I thought, if we spoke calmly, I could understand what was really going on. Maybe it was just his imagination after all. I sat beside him while he ate his cereal, the TV playing softly in the background. He seemed normal enough, quiet but not scared, just distant. I hesitated, then asked as gently as I could, "Sweetheart, can you tell me what the man looks like? The one you talked to?" He didn't even pause. He kept eating, swinging his legs under the chair, and said naturally, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, "He doesn't have a face, but he always smiles at me." I stared at him. No face. "But he smiles." I felt my stomach turn, but I kept my voice steady. "What do you mean, no face?" He looked up at me then, finally, spoon paused halfway to his mouth. "It's like a shadow, but his smile is wide like this." He dragged his fingers across his cheeks, stretching his lips into something that didn't look like a child's grin. It was too forced, too wide. Then he added quietly, "He said he used to have a face, but he gave it away." I didn't ask to who. I couldn't. The room suddenly felt too cold for morning. The light through the window didn't feel warm anymore. It felt pale, thin. And for the rest of the day, I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. Because if something with no face could smile, I wondered what it would take for it to stop. That made me nauseous. Something about the way he said it, so casual, so certain, left a weight in my chest that didn't go away. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever this was, it was getting stronger, closer. I started paying attention to the details, the little things I'd always dismissed, and that's when I noticed the toys moving on their own. At first, I thought it was just my son playing and forgetting to mention it. But no, I began taking pictures of his shelves before bedtime, marking exactly where each toy was. In the morning, something was always different. A truck facing the wrong way. A teddy bear moved from the shelf to the floor, but stranger still, one of them, an old doll he never played with, was never where I left it. It was a porcelain thing, pale and cracked with faded blue eyes and a dress that had yellowed over time. I didn't even remember buying it. I assumed it had come from a box of hand-me-downs, maybe from my own childhood, but it began appearing in odd places, sitting upright at the kitchen table, propped against the bathroom sink, once even on my pillow when I came home from the grocery store. Each time I asked my son, he always said the same thing. I didn't move her, he did. He says she watches for him when he's sleeping. I tried throwing the doll out, dropped it in the trash outside, told myself it was just a coincidence. The next morning, it was back on the shelf, sitting, smiling, head tilted slightly toward the door. That night, I dreamed of a small voice whispering from inside the walls. "You shouldn't have touched her." And when I woke up, the doll was at the foot of my bed, hands folded, eyes open, facing me. I installed a hidden baby monitor with a camera. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone. I just needed to know. Needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. That night, I tucked him in as usual, kissed his forehead. He smiled at me, but there was something distant in his eyes, like part of him was already listening to something else. Waiting, I left the room, turned off the light, and watched the monitor from my own bed until I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke early, heart pounding for no reason. I made coffee with shaking hands and sat down to review the footage. Most of it was still, quiet, nothing unusual. Until 3:12 a.m. he sits up in bed, suddenly, not groggy, not slow, like he'd been called. He turns his head toward the corner, that same corner, and starts speaking softly. There's no sound on the video, but I can see his lips moving. He's having a conversation, calm, familiar. But then, something answers. Not with words, not at first. A shape, just for a second, barely a flicker on the edge of the frame. A shadow that stretches across the wall, though nothing in the room moved. And the camera glitches, just once, like something passed too close to the lens. Then his head tilts, as if listening carefully, and he nods. Slowly. I scrubbed back, watched it again. Again. The same flicker, the same distortion, the same invisible presence. And just before 3:14 he says something that chills me even in silence. He points directly at the camera, directly at me, and he mouths one word, clearly. Soon. It was a low voice. Distant, like it came from inside the walls. Not static, not interference. It was real, deep, resonant, and filled with something I couldn't name. Not anger, not grief. Something older. Expectation. I had the volume turned up as I watched the footage again, leaning in close, barely breathing. The voice came just after my son pointed at the camera. A crackle, a hum, then, clear as if someone were whispering directly behind me. You promised it would be only him. I froze. My hand instinctively moved to pause the video, but I couldn't press the button. My fingers had gone numb. My throat felt tight, like the air in the room had thickened. What promise? I had never, but even as I thought that, something inside me shifted. A flicker, like a memory almost remembered. A cold pressure behind my eyes. A dream I had forgotten, or chosen to forget. And then I realized. The voice wasn't only in the recording, I could still hear it. Very faint but present, as if the walls around me hadn't stopped echoing. I stood up so fast I knocked the chair over. The monitor screen blinked, once, twice, and then went dark. In the silence that followed, I could hear my son upstairs, talking to someone, laughing. And for the first time, I didn't want to go check on him, because a part of me finally believed something I had refused to until now. This thing. It wasn't haunting him. It was waiting for me. I called a technician to clean the audio. Told him it was from a baby monitor. Just a routine check. Some strange sounds I wanted to isolate. I didn't mention the voice or the shadow. I needed to hear it from someone else first. I needed to know I wasn't imagining it. He took the file without many questions, promised he'd have something by the next day. When I went to pick it up, he didn't greet me with the usual polite smile. He looked pale, uncomfortable, eyes slightly sunken as if he hadn't slept. He handed me a USB drive and hesitated. Then he said quietly, "This isn't background noise. There's something responding to your son." I waited, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" He looked around as if making sure we were alone. "There's a voice, a deep one. It only speaks twice, but it's clear, intelligent, like it's answering him. Not just random sounds, like a conversation. And there's something else." I didn't speak, I just stared. When I slowed the audio down, there were whispers underneath the main voice. Dozens of them, all saying the same thing over and over. I felt cold all over. "What were they saying?" I managed to ask. He swallowed hard. "They kept saying she broke the promise, over and over like a chant." I didn't say anything. I just took the drive, thanked him, and left. That night I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the small silver device in my hand, and the weight of it felt unnatural, like it carried more than just data, like something had been captured that should have never been heard again. And upstairs, in his room, my son was humming softly, a tune I'd never taught him, a lullaby I didn't know. But I swear, the house hummed it back. I showed it to my wife. We sat at the kitchen table while the audio played, just once. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at the speaker like it might say more. When the voice came through, low, inhuman, deliberate, she flinched. Then the whispers began. The chant. She broke the promise. That's when she started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears running down her cheeks, one after the other, like something inside her had broken open. I tried to stay calm, tried to be the one who held it together, but the truth was, hearing that voice again and watching her break down made it real in a way it hadn't been before. It wasn't just happening anymore. It was here, with us. That night, while we sat in our bedroom in silence, trying to figure out what to do, our son came in. He didn't say a word, just walked over and handed me a drawing, then turned and left. I looked down at the paper. It was him, my son, drawn in crayon, standing in front of our house. He was smiling, but beside him was a tall, black figure, faceless, its head bent down toward him, long arms stretching nearly to the ground, and its eyes, the only detail he had colored in with force, were huge, completely black circles that bled through the page. I flipped it over instinctively, not wanting to look at it anymore. But on the back, written in uneven child handwriting, were 5 words. He says it's almost time. That night, I decided to sleep in the room with him. I told myself it was to make sure he was safe, that if anything happened, I'd be right there. But deep down, I think I needed to see it for myself, needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. I brought a blanket and a pillow, set them on the floor beside his bed. He was already asleep when I lay down, his breathing slow and steady, his small hands curled gently against his chest. At first, everything was quiet, still. But I couldn't sleep. The air in the room felt thick, like it was pressing down on me, like I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. And then, at 3:16 a.m., I felt it, an intense cold, sudden and sharp, sinking into my bones like ice water. The kind of cold that doesn't come from open windows or bad insulation, the kind that feels alive. The nightlight flickered once, twice, then buzzed faintly, the shadows on the walls trembling with each pulse. And that's when I heard it. My son's voice, soft, distant, but clear. Without opening his eyes, he whispered, "He's here, and he doesn't like you." My heart froze. I sat up, eyes darting to the corner of the room. That corner. But I didn't see anything. Just the familiar dark patch where the light didn't quite reach. But it felt full, occupied. Then came a sound. Not a voice, not footsteps. Something lower. A hum, deep and vibrating, like it was coming from beneath the floor or inside the walls or inside me. My son shifted slightly in bed, still asleep, still calm. But I wasn't. Every instinct in my body was screaming to get out, to run. And then, for the briefest second, I saw it. A silhouette in the corner. Tall, impossibly thin, head tilted toward me. No face, just 2 black eyes, open wide, watching. Then I saw it. At the corner of the room, where the shadows always felt too deep, a dark shape, hunched, motionless, almost blending into the wall, but not quite. It wasn't the absence of light, it was something else. It seemed to absorb what little light there was, like the room itself was dimming around it. Its edges were wrong, not soft like a shadow, but jagged, as if it were stitched into the space, pulling reality inward. And even though it didn't move, I felt its attention, heavy, suffocating, ancient. That was not human. No trick of the eye, no dream. It was real. And it was aware. My breath caught in my throat. My body refused to move, as if my bones understood something my mind couldn't yet accept. The nightlight flickered again, weaker this time. Like it, too, was afraid. My son lay still in bed, eyes closed, completely calm, as if he knew it was there, as if he'd always known. Then, without warning, the shape twitched, just a slight shift like it was adjusting its posture, or reacting to me. I stood up slowly, every muscle shaking, my back pressed against the wall, heart pounding so loudly I was sure it could hear it. And it leaned forward, not with feet, not by stepping, it simply stretched, smooth and silent, closer. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even blink. And then my son's voice broke the silence, soft and distant. "He doesn't want you here anymore." The shadow stopped, not retreating, not vanishing, just waiting like it agreed. I went to my son. My legs felt heavy, like I was moving through water, but I forced myself forward. He was still lying in bed, his face pale, eyes squeezed shut. Hey, it's okay," I whispered, kneeling beside him. "I'm here." But as soon as I touched his shoulder, he flinched violently and started to cry. Tears spilled down his cheeks as he began to tremble, his small hands gripping the blanket so tightly his knuckles turned white. And then he started repeating it, over and over. "Don't look at him, don't look at him." His voice cracked, filled with fear I had never heard from him before. I held him close, heart pounding, trying to soothe him, but he wouldn't stop. His body stiffened in my arms, and he kept whispering through chattering teeth. "He doesn't like when people look at him." I glanced toward the corner, just for a second. Just a reflex, and something moved. Not with a sound, not with force. It slid, like smoke, like a shadow with weight, slowly pulling itself back into the darkness, deeper than any shadow should go. The room grew colder. The light finally died. And I realized then, whatever it was, it hadn't left. It had simply stepped aside, waiting. And in my arms, my son sobbed harder, burying his face into my chest, whispering one last time, "Now he knows you saw him." The next day, we moved to my mother's house. I didn't tell anyone exactly why. I couldn't. Not without sounding insane. But I just needed to get away, to put distance between us and that house, between my son and whatever that was. I told my wife it was the best thing to do, that we'd be safe there, that it was just a temporary move. I even tried to convince myself of it. But as we packed, my son remained eerily quiet. He didn't ask questions, didn't fuss. He simply followed me around, eyes hollow. He didn't look at the boxes or the things we left behind. I thought the worst was over. I thought if we just left, we could escape whatever dark presence had taken hold of our home. But what happened after broke me inside. We arrived at my mother's house, and I tried to act normal. I told myself that a change of scenery, a fresh start, would help him. I tried to make him laugh, to reassure him. He barely responded. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I was sitting in the living room watching the door to his room. I don't know why. I think part of me was still waiting for something, anything. And then I heard it, a soft tap at the door. I stood up, heart racing, already knowing who it was. When I opened it, I found my son standing in the hallway. He was still in his pajamas, eyes wide, pupils dilated. He didn't say a word. He just held something out to me. It was a drawing. My heart stopped when I saw it. It was the same figure, the faceless, towering shape. But this time, its hands were wrapped around my son's shoulders. The black eyes were larger, darker, and beneath the figure, scrawled in jagged handwriting, were 2 words: "You can't run." I knelt down to him, trembling. "Why did you bring this to me?" I whispered. His voice was small, hollow. He followed us. And when I looked up, the room seemed to grow colder. The shadows stretched unnaturally, like they were reaching. I didn't know what to do anymore. I just wanted to protect him. But I had no idea what he had already promised. While unpacking, I found the same drawing at the bottom of his backpack. Only now, there were 3 people in the picture. My son, the man, and me. At first I thought it was just a mistake, a misinterpretation of his childish drawings. But as I stared at the paper, something cold crept over me. The lines weren't random or innocent like before. The drawing had been altered, added to. The tall, faceless figure was still there, looming over my son. But now, beside him, was a smaller figure, someone I recognized. It was me. I froze. The familiar shapes, the angle of the shoulders, the posture. It was unmistakably me, even though my face was just a blur, like the man's. I wasn't looking at my son. I wasn't looking at the man. I was staring at them, but my attention was directed elsewhere, as though I was being drawn into the shadows that clung to the edges of the paper. A pit formed in my stomach. The chill that had followed me for days, the feeling of being watched, it intensified. It wasn't just him anymore. It wasn't just my son. It was me too. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but the weight of the drawing, the dark implication, made it almost impossible to breathe. I reached for the paper, but my hands shook too much to grab it. There were 3 people in that drawing now, and one of them was me. That night he turned to me and said, "Daddy, the man told me a secret. He used to play with you when you were little." I froze. The air in the room seemed to thicken, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. My son's voice, so innocent and calm, cut through the silence, but his words sent a shiver down my spine. I looked at him, trying to stay composed, but inside, my mind was racing. The man, the same figure that had haunted his drawings, the one that had been lurking in our home, the one that I thought was only a shadow. What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky. He smiled, that same gentle smile he always had. "He said you played with him too, when you were my age. He said you promised you'd always play with him." I felt the room close in around me. I couldn't move. My thoughts were a jumble, like 1,000 pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite put together. The man, the promise. Suddenly I remembered something from my own childhood, something I had long buried in the back of my mind. A game, a presence, something I had always thought was just a bad dream. But hearing my son speak those words made the memories surge back, clearer than ever. And just like that, I realized this wasn't just happening to him. It was happening to us. And then everything made sense. The dreams I used to have, the ones I had dismissed as nightmares, the ones that never quite felt like dreams at all. The voices I heard when I was a child, faint whispers in the dark, always just out of reach, like someone was speaking to me from a distance. I thought they were just figments of my imagination, things I had outgrown. But now, in the quiet of that moment, it all clicked. Maybe he never left. Maybe he's waiting for me to come play again too. The thought hit me like a wave, crashing over everything I had known to be real. I could see it now, as clear as day. A figure in the corner of my childhood room, just like the ones in my son's drawings. A tall, faceless figure beckoning me with its dark, empty eyes. Always there, always present. Not just a memory, but something I had pushed away. Something I had forgotten for so long. But I hadn't forgotten, had I? Maybe I'd been running from it my whole life, pretending it was all in my head, hiding from the truth. And now my son was caught in it. Caught in the same web I'd been tangled in years ago. "Daddy?" My son's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. He was looking up at me, his small face filled with concern. "Why are you sad, Daddy?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm okay, buddy. I'm just thinking." But deep down, I knew the truth. I had been marked long ago, and now my son had been chosen too. He wasn't just playing with the man. Neither of us had ever stopped.